So now bear in mind that we have a mention here of a second veil. Okay, there were more than two, actually. There was more than that. So there were several veils. And these veils were these huge curtain-like things. But they were like, I'm talking like stories high. Sometimes in the building, they were these huge curtains, very thick. And so when we hear about the tearing of the veil when Yeshua died, we're not talking about this one, the one into the Holy of Holies. I'm going to follow the example that was just said in that verse. There are going to be things of which I'm not going to speak in detail. Why? Because they're not pertinent to the point. That's what the writer's telling you also. There's a lot of things that I could speak about in more detail, but they're not pertinent to this point that I'm trying to make, is what the writer's saying. We're seeing there's a difference between when you do it by mistake and when you do it defiantly. And we're going to see that play out also in the book of Hebrews. So you needed this foundation. That's an important lesson when you're studying or reading things in the Brit, in the Brit Chadashah, that you know what's being referenced from the Tanakh. Go find it to make sure you have the right context. In other words, it's not just literal. It's trying to give you a moral to the story or a lesson that's in the story itself. It's a parable. By the way, we know from Scripture that Yahweh says that he has always talked to us in parables. Yeshua spoke to them in parables. And here's another one, okay? So he's saying that the whole first tent, the covenant, the covenant in Sinai that gave us the tent of meeting, that gave us the tent in the desert, the Mishkan, that this is still a parable of something. It's teaching us a lesson, a story. It's pointing us towards a point. But because the Greek is pointing towards a thorough setting straight, my guess is that this is hinting at the millennium period. This is not for then, and it's still not yet for now. Because Christianity will say, oh, well, Messiah came and set it all straight, so we don't have to do any of this stuff anymore. Bear in mind, Messiah has already been dead now for about 40 years. And nowhere in this book of Hebrews does it tell them, what's wrong with you, you idiots? Why are you still going to the temple? Nowhere. Nowhere in the book of Acts does it say that either. By the way, that's the thing that always blows my mind. Either Peter was just the dumbest dumb of them all, or Christians just don't get the point that Peter never got a message ever that he could eat whatever he wanted. It's a shedding of blood that has to do with redemption. And redemption is not the same thing as forgiveness. Okay? There's a difference. Okay? If you came over to me and slapped me in the face and then later said you're sorry, I can forgive you. That doesn't mean we are restored in our relationship. Okay, because Yeshua brings reconciliation, Yeshua brings restoration and redemption through what he did, things that the temple service never did. And by the way, we are suffering so much mental health issues, so much psycho-emotional issues because of this not being understood, that people can have a cleansed conscience from dead works. Now, you're being cleansed from dead works. Again, Christians, don't think Torah, because that's what you always taught. Dead works, all that Torah stuff. No. Dead works, as we talked about in previous parts of this teaching, are you thinking what you're doing is going to accomplish something and all it accomplishes is death. Fruitless works, works that will not ever get you where you want to go. So here you are. You're responding to people, you're responding to your Creator, you're doing all the things you're doing because your conscience is all screwed up and you're still doing these dead works. So now we're dealing with another aspect, okay? What Yeshua's blood did that the other shedding of blood did not do was redeem. It was for forgiveness. We read that in Numbers. It said, and their sins would be forgiven. But there's a difference between his blood and the blood of bulls and goats, etc. His is for redemption. It is substitutionary. In other words, he says, I'm taking the penalty on myself so you don't have to. What is it talking about? It's saying almost like a last will and testament type of thing as a covenant being, that it doesn't take effect until the blood. Okay? Moses, when it was all said and done in Exodus 24, he takes the blood, sprinkles it on the book, sprinkles on the people, and now the thing is in effect. Yeshua died, and he shed his blood, and now the thing is in effect. Okay? So don't start thinking about, well, he had to die because of this, or he had to die because... No, it's simply saying that the blood being shed brings about the effect because it's something that was supposed to take place after the shedding of the blood. So also the Messiah, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, shall appear a second time apart from sin to those waiting for him unto deliverance. That's the whole idea. That's the whole story. He said he's coming back. But it's going to be, he's coming back for who? Those waiting for him. To be found so doing. Well done, you good and trustworthy servant. Those who are found so doing and waiting. Their lamps are filled with oil. They're ready. They're not sleeping when the thief comes. They're vigilant. They're paying attention. And that is onto deliverance, not onto forgiveness.